Located in the Palace Museum is the Nansansur compound, the place where Qin princes lived and studied. But today, it houses the museum's Department of Ancient Articles. This is Geng Baocheng, and he has worked for the Palace Museum for nearly 50 years. His most important work has been to study and appraise works of porcelain. Porcelain products were once works that were unique to the people of China. They can be fiery like the process from which they come, but they can also be elegant like water. Ancient Chinese people used their minds and spirits to turn common clay into articles of beauty. Porcelain objects were used by Tang Emperor Shu Zetian as precious containers to hold Buddhist relics. In the imperial court of Song Huizong, porcelain objects were used as elegant ornaments. Kublai Khan, the first emperor of the Yuan dynasty, used them as valuable commodities for foreign trade. Emperor Yongle presented works of porcelain as precious gifts to foreign envoys. Emperor Yongzheng even created works of porcelain art. Today, various essential utensils on the everyday life of Chinese people are made of porcelain. Fine works of porcelain are treasures that can be seen almost everywhere in this, the world's largest palace. And these items in the palace are an important part of the common cultural heritage of mankind. Of the 1.5 million items listed as cultural relics in the Palace Museum, 350,000 are porcelain objects. Of all these articles, Mr. Geng likes these two small porcelain cups the best. No more than 6 centimeters tall, the cups were made with porcelain painted in contending colors during the reign of Ming Emperor Changhua, and they are among the most precious pieces in the Palace Museum. Geng saw them for the first time 70 years ago. The first owner of these cups was Emperor Changhua. It was said that in 1481, the ministers in the court had not seen their emperor Zhu Zhenshen for a considerable time, although the emperor was known to be making merry in the living quarters of the Forbidden City with Wan, his favorite concubine. In order to win her heart, Emperor Changhua ordered artisans in Jingdezhen to make small, exquisite wine cups for her appreciation. Because these cups feature a hen and chicken pattern, they are called Changhua chicken cups, and there are only about a dozen of them in the world. But porcelain cups painted in contending colors with butterfly, orchid, and grass patterns are even more precious. In the entire world, only 2 of them are well preserved, and both are retained in the Palace Museum. They were praised by men of letters as the best drinking vessels in the world. More than 500 years have passed since the time of Emperor Chanhua, but some of the porcelain pieces appreciated by his concubine Hua are still retained in this palace, but others have been long dispersed all over the world. Most of the 350,000 works of porcelain retained in the palace, however, are unique to the palace, and there are many stories about these porcelain pieces and their owners who once lived in this palace. Most of the porcelain items have become regarded as classical artworks that the Chinese are naturally very proud of. Chinese scholars have always praised olive green porcelain pieces. They have a feel of gentle jade and crystal clear ice. These are the oldest porcelain bottles retained among the Palace Museum collections. There are many stories about these porcelain bottles, some being about whether they even existed or not, while others revolved around their origin and names. Opinions varied as to all of these stories, and for a long time there were no final conclusions. Debate on these matters did not come to an end until 1987, when 13 olive green porcelain objects were unearthed at the underground palace of the Famin Temple in Shanxi. Since the founding of the People's Republic of China, the Palace Museum has bought just 3 olive green porcelain pieces. Even the emperors in the Ming and Qing dynasties didn't have easy access to these mysterious porcelain works, with Emperor Qianlong even composing a poem to express his feelings about them. Porcelain works made in the Yue kiln in the Tang dynasty can scarcely be found in the world, and porcelain works made in the official kilns of the Northern Sung dynasty can only be found in heaven. In the ancient history of China, the most rare and most beautiful things were often used exclusively by the imperial family. In Jingdezhen, in the second year of the reign of Ming Emperor Hongwu, the imperial kiln was officially established, the first official kiln in the true sense of the term in Chinese history. It was supervised and operated by the imperial court, and used the best quality clay to be found. All the porcelain works produced in the imperial kiln were used exclusively by the imperial family, and they were not to be used and traded among the common people. All methods pertaining to kilning, along with related formulas, were highly confidential. The Ming Emperor Zhuyuanzhang decided that all the vessels for offering sacrifices to heaven and earth should be changed to porcelain ones, because at the time the sacrificial vessels were made of gold, silver, and jade. Later, Ming Emperor Zhu took the lead in using porcelain bowls during meals instead of jade ones, and he also used porcelain works as burial objects and as gifts to countries affiliated with China. This blue and white porcelain cup was made during the reign of Ming Emperor Yongle, and today it is kept in the Palace Museum. The 4 Chinese characters on its inner bottom inform us that it was made during the reign of Emperor Yongle. This was the first cup from the official kilns to indicate the emperor's reign during which it was made. From that time on, all Chinese emperors enjoyed having their titles of the reign incorporated into the porcelain works made during their reign. This is one of the most distinguishing features of porcelain objects produced in the official kilns. With the support of its emperors, the production level of porcelain in the Ming dynasty improved greatly. At this time, artisans came to Jingdezhen from all parts of the country. and their porcelains were shipped to every corner of the world, causing Jingdezhen to become the center of the porcelain industry in China. A French missionary who visited Jingdezhen described a scene of porcelain production. In the daytime, thick smoke blots out the clouds. At night, the kiln fires make the sky red. Finished porcelain objects were taken by Chinese, Persian, Portuguese, and British ships from Yangzhou, Guangzhou, and Quanzhou to all the civilizations of India, the Arab Peninsula, Europe, and even Africa. It was at that time that the most exquisite porcelain works of the highest quality made in Jingdezhen were transported to just one place, Beijing's Forbidden City. These porcelain works of art, made in the official Ming Dynasty kilns, were transported into the imperial palace from Jingdezhen. At present, porcelain pieces made at the imperial kilns exclusively for the use of the imperial family are collected together in the Palace Museum. But besides these, there are also porcelain objects made in the Yuan and Ming dynasties created especially for exporting to overseas markets. And the most representative of all kinds of porcelain is, of course, blue and white porcelain. In an auction held by Christie's in Britain in July 2005, a blue and white Mountquay Guxia vase made in the Yuan dynasty was sold for 230 million yuan, making it the most valuable Asian artwork ever auctioned. This blue and white dish made in the Yuan dynasty is kept in the Palace Museum. This is a blue and white red underglazed vase, and as such it's more precious and rare than single-color blue and white porcelain works. Blue and white porcelain works were first made in the Tang dynasty, but they became highly popular in the Ming dynasty, and so the production of them reached a new zenith during the Ming dynasty, both in terms of quantity and quality. These are the most representative blue and white porcelain pieces made during the reigns of Emperor Yongle and Xuandu, kept in the Palace Museum. They were made using smalt, brought back by Zhenghe from overseas. Smalt was used to produce a rich and gaudy color, and there are some unique spots on the surface of these porcelain pieces. These spots are similar to the effect achieved by special techniques used in Chinese ink wash paintings. It was at this time that blue and white porcelain pieces became the most popular Chinese exports to Asia, Europe, and Africa. From the Yuan dynasty to the Ming dynasty, numerous overseas ships loaded with porcelain pieces made in China sank in the Atlantic and Indian Oceans. Today, every salvage effort naturally brings about exciting discoveries. Porcelain works of art are delicate. During kilning under high temperatures, it is hard to predict and control the complicated changes that take place, so ancient Chinese people often commented that it was difficult to produce truly fine porcelain, and that doing so requires both favorable conditions and good craftsmanship. Many porcelain artisans failed to produce porcelain works that were truly fine in terms of shape, quality, pattern, and color during their entire lifetime. However, quality porcelain works that are so delicate have survived through the centuries to the present day, and the most representative of porcelain works made in the official kilns during the Ming Dynasty are collected together in the Palace Museum. If a piece of porcelain made in the imperial kilns was found to have a flaw, it would be thrown away on the spot. These are the ruins of the imperial kiln of the Ming Dynasty in Jingdezhen, and here we can clearly see in the soil pieces of blue and white porcelain made in the official kilns at that time. In the Forbidden City, eunuchs were responsible for burying broken porcelain objects. According to records, in the Ming and Qing dynasties, if any porcelain object used in the imperial palace was damaged, it could not be disposed of in a casual manner. Such broken porcelain objects had to be buried in a special place, and not a single broken piece was allowed to be taken out of the palace. After the Palace Museum was established, a great number of porcelain pieces were found in many places at former palace construction sites, thus proving the record to be true. This is Beiwu Sor compound in the Palace Museum, and it is here that unearthed broken pieces of porcelain become the best specimens in the study of ancient porcelain. For this reason, cleaning porcelain pieces is one of the major tasks of the ceramics section of the Department of Ancient Articles in the Palace Museum.
这个问题啊，就是然后这康熙的每块东西，还是官窑还是民窑，历史上啊就没有把它闹清楚。在过去俗常的这约定成俗的一句话叫克货，克货是什么？就是外销的东西了，都是外销瓷了，没有出示官窑。有的就是康熙时期，康熙皇帝本身呢不愿意让写皇帝的年款，而且瓷器容易打碎。 当时你会就跟垃圾一样给扔了，或者把黄的扔了，这个所以康熙不好遵号。
Articles in the imperial court were usually marked with the influence of its emperors. The aesthetic taste of the emperors, along with their temperaments, hobbies, and political ambitions, had great impact on the production of porcelain works. On the 7th day of the first lunar month of the 18th year of the reign of Qing Emperor Xuanzhi, Emperor Kangxi ascended the throne at the age of 8. At this time, Wu Liangfu, a eunuch in charge of court affairs, was arrested and executed by Shuaozhuang, the Empress Dowager. The 13 eunuch-dominated government offices that had been set up in the Ming Dynasty were abolished, and the office of the imperial household was established in their place. This office was now in charge of all imperial palace internal affairs. Workshops under this office took charge of the production of all articles used in the imperial court, and the office had dozens of departments. Thus, the production of porcelain was directly under the control of the office of the imperial household. Starting from Emperor Kangxi, Qin emperors devoted more time and energy to producing porcelain pieces than previous emperors had done. Emperor Kangxi's greatest contribution to China's porcelain industry was his decision to produce cloisonné enameled porcelain. French missionaries had presented Emperor Kangxi copper-bodied cloisonné enamels as tributes, and the emperor had fallen in love with the enamel pieces at first sight. He decided to produce this kind of enamel piece on a trial basis in the imperial court, and then to apply the enamel techniques to production of porcelain works. In order to make cloisonné enameled porcelain pieces, Emperor Kangxi set up the enamel workshops under the office of imperial household. Copper-bonded cloisonné enamels were the only porcelain pieces produced inside the imperial palace for the imperial family. When the plain-colored porcelain objects were ready in Jingdezhen, they were then transported to the Forbidden City where, after court painters painted and colored them, they were put into the kiln fire in the imperial court. The imperial kiln was located inside the Hall of Mental Cultivation, and this made it easier for Emperor Kangxi to supervise the process. It was unprecedented in China and the world over for porcelain works to be made in an imperial court under the direct instructions of an emperor. And in this case, it was even more extraordinary, as copper-bonded cloisonné enamel pieces had, after all, originated in the West. Kangxi became enthusiastic about gathering foreign missionaries who could paint. If the answer was in the affirmative, the missionary would be invited to the imperial palace to help make cloisonné enamel works, even if he was not particularly keen to do so. In March of the 56th year of the reign of Emperor Kangxi, Matteo Ripa, an Italian missionary, wrote a letter to a colleague in Europe saying, "The emperor likes European enamel paintings. He has asked European painters to paint enamels. We are to work with those humble Chinese artisans all day long, so we pretended that we had never learned how to paint enamels, and we refused to learn. The paintings we made were very bad, and as a result, the emperor gave up." Under the direct supervision of Emperor Kangxi, works of cloisonné enameled porcelain were successfully produced before he passed away. These cloisonné enameled porcelain pieces were in the same style as copper-bonded cloisonné enamel pieces. They mostly featured flowers and were all made with imported enamel pigments. In 1723, when Emperor Yongzheng ascended the throne, he not only inherited imperial power from his father, but also his father's love of cloisonné enameled porcelain works. However, production did not make much headway until the 6th year of the reign of Emperor Yongzheng. The main reason was because in the first 6 years of the reign of Emperor Yongzheng, the enamel needed to make cloisonné enameled porcelain pieces had to be imported from the West. Emperor Yongzheng appointed his brother Yongchen as head of the workshops under the office of the imperial household to take charge of the production of cloisonné enameled porcelains. Finally, in the 6th year of the reign of Emperor Yongzheng, all aspects of making enamel works could be undertaken in China, and what's more, China was now able to produce more varieties of enamel works than could be seen among the imported enamels. Emperor Yongzheng was just as obsessed with cloisonné enameled porcelains as his father had been, and so, despite his tight schedule, he often designed porcelains himself. He concerned himself with the raw materials, patterns, and even the size of the porcelains. On the 17th day of the second lunar month of the 6th year of his reign, Emperor Yongzheng was handling a number of important state affairs. In the morning, he first went to the Hall of Central Harmony and Hall of Preserving Harmony to inspect the preparations for sacrifices to gods at the altar of agriculture. Then he went back to the Hall of Mental Cultivation, where he reviewed 3 memos to the throne. But even when he was so busy, he still found time to write detailed instructions concerning the shape, design, and materials for enamel articles. These are cloisonné enameled porcelains made during the reign of Emperor Yongzheng. Researchers today regard them as being simple and elegant, delicate and pretty, and aesthetically meaningful. After the 6th year of the reign of Emperor Yongzheng, famous court painters were asked to make colored drawings with enamels on white porcelain, and these porcelains featured plum blossoms, orchids, bamboo, and chrysanthemums, things that were cherished by traditional men of letters. In the 8,000-year history of ceramics in China, cloisonné enameled porcelains were made in the zenith of the production of ancient ceramics, and still today they represent the highest level of ceramic technology in China. Emperor Yongzheng was a follower of Tibetan Buddhism. As he upheld the unity between heaven and man and pursued primitive simplicity and naturalness, he therefore liked Sung porcelain works since they are natural, simple, and elegant. Another contribution he made to court porcelains was his imitation of the 5 famous porcelains in which the Song dynasty reached its highest level. On the 7th day of the 8th lunar month, in the 8th year of his reign, Emperor Yongzheng ordered that the imperial kiln should imitate the porcelains produced by the Jun kiln in the Song dynasty. This is a Jun kiln drum-shaped dish produced in imitation during the reign of Emperor Yongzheng. This is an authentic Jun kiln drum-shaped dish made in the Song dynasty, and as such it is characterized by alternating red and blue glaze. Many Chinese people believe that gold has a price, but that Jun kiln porcelains apparently do not. Thus, it is said that being a millionaire is good, but being the owner of a piece of Jun kiln porcelain is even better. Following the emperor's instructions, the artisans of the Rule kiln began to create this kind of light blue porcelain piece. Of all the objects produced in the 5 famous kilns in the Sung dynasty, those remaining from the Rule kiln are the smallest in number, less than 100 pieces in the entire world. 20 are retained in the Palace Museum, while others are to be found in the Palace Museum in Taipei. In the Forbidden City during the reign of Ming Emperor Xuandu, among the collections of the imperial household were porcelain works made by the following kilns: Chai, Ru, Official, Ge, Juin, and Din. And the porcelain works made by these kilns that the Palace Museum has now were used by the imperial family of the Song dynasty. The glaze of Ge kiln porcelain pieces are covered in cracks, some large and black, while others are small and yellow. The most prominent features of official kiln porcelain works is their lavender gray glaze and their elegant, simple, and unsophisticated patterns. The Ding kiln was the only one of the 5 famous kilns in the Song dynasty to produce white porcelain works. Ding kiln porcelain works feature excellent carved designs, and their printed patterns were the best out of all the kilns of the Song dynasty. These porcelain works are the most valuable pieces in the Palace Museum, as they were made during the first pinnacle in China's porcelain making history. Porcelain production reached another pinnacle during the reigns of Qing emperors Kanqi, Yongzheng, and Zhenrong. Under Emperor Qianlong, the population of Qingdezhen, China's porcelain producing center, reached 1 million, with 23 workshops making porcelain pieces exclusively for the imperial family. In the 3rd year of his reign, Emperor Qianlong asked court painters to paint producing ceramics and porcelains. These paintings record porcelain production at the imperial kiln in great detail and portray the new technologies developed by the official kiln during Qianlong's reign. They describe the 20-step process of porcelain production in the official kilns in detail, and these help to standardize the process. Emperor Qianlong's concern over the production of porcelain works reflected his political ideal that the emperor should be close to his people and diligent in attending to state affairs, and that he should rule the country with a high level of morality. According to Producing Ceramics and Porcelains, offering sacrifices to the gods for help was an important working procedure in the production of porcelain. During the reign of Ming Emperor Wanli, some artisans were required to follow instructions from the imperial court regarding the making of a large dragon vat, but they failed to produce it time and again. As the deadline approached, the artisans were said to be punished for their failure to meet the deadline. One of the artisans, named Tongbin, became very anxious, and in order to save his colleagues, he jumped into the kiln, and as a result, the vat was successfully made. From that time on, artisans showed their respect to him by worshipping as the god of kiln, and before each kilning, they burnt incense and offered sacrifices to him for his help. The text of Producing Ceramics and Porcelains was written by Tan Ying, an official in charge of the supervision of porcelain production. Tang began doing odd jobs at the Hall of Mental Cultivation at the age of 13. But in the 6th year of the reign of Emperor Yongzheng, Tang's capabilities were recognized, and he was dispatched to the imperial kiln in Jingdezhen to supervise porcelain production there, as an assistant to Nian Qiya, who was in charge. During a period of 3 years, he didn't participate in any social activities at all, just so that he could spend all his time with the artisans studying porcelain production intensively and painstakingly. By the 9th year of the reign of Emperor Yongzheng, he had become a porcelain expert. In the 2nd year of the reign of Emperor Qianlong, Tang was officially appointed supervisor of porcelain production. The porcelain pieces made in Jingdezhen during this period are recognized as the best quality porcelain pieces. Tang reached unprecedented levels both in copying, designing new pieces, and in making porcelain articles. As a result, Tang became China's most outstanding supervisor of porcelain production. This piece of porcelain is one of those made when Tang served as supervisor during the reign of Emperor Qianlong. During the reign of Emperor Qianlong, the management of porcelain production became much stricter, and the requirements for the official supervision of porcelain production became more demanding than ever before. During this period, even Tang was vulnerable to punishment. In the 13th year of the reign of Emperor Qianlong, Tang received an imperial edict from Emperor Qianlong. It reads, "The porcelains presented by Tang Ying this time have the same shape and design as before. Why didn't he make them in accordance with the new shapes and new designs? The expenses for making these porcelains will not be reimbursed and will be covered by him." And so, Tang paid all the expenses incurred and making 467 porcelain pieces. This was a new product presented by Tang Ying, a lavender gray glazed Jiao Tai vase, referred to as Tiandi Jiao Tai in the Book of Changes, and which means peaceful and prosperous times. The upper and lower parts of the vase are linked, but on the one hand, while they seem detachable, on the other hand, they cannot be disassembled. This vase was also made under Tang Ying's supervision. It is a Famille Rose Rui Jiao Tai vase with a reticulated exterior, independently revolving interior, and the 8 trigrams. This is a Famille Rose vase with reticulated exterior and independently revolving interior with open work. It consists of 3 parts. Aside from the body, all parts can rotate. The rotating part in the neck and the body constitute a perpetual calendar. Emperor Qianlong was as interested in porcelain production as in other cultural undertakings. His strenuous involvement in the industry, combined with the hard work of his supervisors, made it possible for official kilns to make innovations in porcelain production during his reign. This vase was made by the imperial kiln in Jingdezhen for Emperor Qianlong, and it is unique in the porcelain production history of China. It is about 87 centimeters tall and is called the Mother of Porcelain. It includes 15 kinds of glaze, incorporates 16 ornaments, and features 12 patterns. No such large and exquisite article requiring such complicated craftsmanship had ever been produced in any previous dynasty, and perhaps this partly explains why Emperor Qianlong proudly called himself the perfect old man. When Emperor Qianlong acquired this artwork, the Qing dynasty was approaching another pinnacle in the development of culture and art. However, over the next 50 years, this dynasty was to witness difficulties and disasters, never before seen in Chinese history. After Emperor Qianlong's reign, the production of imperial porcelain works in China went from bad to worse. In the third year of the reign of Emperor Xuantong, the Qin dynasty came to an end, and official kilns ceased production. Sadly, during the same period, fine works of porcelain that had been collected at the Forbidden City over a period of more than 1,000 years found their way to other places. Starting from the last years of the Qin dynasty, large numbers of porcelain pieces that had been created for the exclusive use of the imperial family were taken out of the palace. They had survived countless wars, only to be carried out of China. In the 1930s, during a period in which China was in chaos, the porcelain cup painted in contending colors was taken out of the palace to be acquired by a private buyer, and Geng Baocheng saw it for the first time. 20 years later, Geng saw it again, during a period in which the Palace Museum was beginning to do better in terms of collecting fine works of Chinese porcelain. Since the founding of New China, the museum has collected over 20,000 more pieces of fine porcelain. On September the 26th, 2005, 181 pieces of porcelain originally exported from China and salvaged from the wreckage of the Gothenburg, a Swedish commercial ship that sank in the ocean in the 18th century, were exhibited at the Meridian Gate Tower in the Palace Museum. When the exhibition came to a close, 18 of these pieces would remain in the Palace Museum and add to its collection of 350,000 pieces of fine porcelain.